You know, with all my projects that I impose upon myself, it's nobody's fault but myself. Fixing the hotel, doing my stagecoaches, playing out on my playground, working with the store across the street. You would think I'd be a little more careful on taking on another project. But you all know that I put another stove in at our barn at our off-grid place. I have a coal forge and I burn wood here in the shop. So I am constantly shoveling something, ashes or coal or something, and I need a ash pan shovel at our new playground. So I have this one here that I have used for years and years, and they are a pretty simple stamped out little shovel, and you can pick them up at the hardware store for less than 10 bucks. They have to be stamped out. But I got to looking at it and thought, you know, I wonder if I could make that. I wonder what would be involved. There's a lot of wrinkling and crinkling and backs, and you know, it's just looked kind of intriguing. So I thought I'd take a try at it, and it's harder than I thought. This is my old original, and this is my first attempt at trying to make one kind of like it. And it's kind of like it, but it's kind of a mess too. This transition through the handle from curling up and doing all this has to be put in just like stovepipe. It has to have this crinkle to it. And then this sharp V to it, and it transitions from a forward roll to a reverse roll with this deep V in it. And I messed it up pretty seriously into here. I got the handle on it and it will work, but it's kind of ugly. So I might try it again and see if I can figure out what I did wrong. As I put the two on top of each other, I think I'm a little extra thick in this transition spot here than what I needed to be. So my pattern I made, I did alter it. I'm going to trim this down a little more so I don't have quite so much material to work in. And see if I can't clean this up a bit. This is some stainless steel that I had here on hand. I don't know what gauge it is, but it seems pretty similar to this one. So, plan B. The first time around, I made this block and fitted it into my old shovel to kind of give me a feel for where all these ridges need to be. And it did work. That's what I ended up forming this around. In order to get these sharp bends, I made a backing plate and clamped it right about so, and so then I was able to heat this up and form it down into these grooves that I cut into this wood block. Well, the one thing I didn't do was to allow a ridge on this block here for this, what ends up being kind of a valley here. So I'm thinking I need to remake this block, but include that V-shaped ridge that comes down here, that I can shape this around and keep it a little closer to this original one here. And after I played with it, and it took me quite a little while to do this, and I got it that far, you know, somebody has got to have done this before on YouTube. YouTube does everything. And there are a lot of simple, easy to make ash pan shovel tutorials out there. But I didn't find a single one that makes this style. They're making the little shovel and then they rivet a handle onto it. Well, that's not what I want. I want to see if I can do this style, all one piece. And I couldn't find a single one out there. Maybe some of you will find that. But there's some pretty well-known blacksmiths out there, and I went through their sites and said, what do you do for ash pan shovels? All of those are two-piece. So So maybe I'm on my own, but I'm going to try to figure out a better way to get this result and clean up my mess, especially this area here. So this is the pattern that I use, but I had it a little thicker through here in this transition area. So I did narrow that down a bit to where I think maybe it's closer to what I need. This is the sheet of stainless steel that I have. The original handle is a little bit longer, but this piece is pretty square. So I'm going to be maybe 1.25 inches shorter on my handle, but I think that's going to be okay. So I'll cut out my rough blank first. This is a little handy dandy cutter that brother-in-law Rick had. So my new block, I think I'm going to make it maybe closer to 10 inches. It'll come clear out to here instead of my 7.5 that I have it now. That should allow for a ridge to come out clear to this point. So this is where I'm at. My little piece of iron here is going to clamp over this portion of the handle to help it fit this a little better, and I put this in so that I have a parallel clamping surface for my clamp. So I think we're pretty close to starting. I'm going to put my blank on the back side, and then I'll clamp that into place with my backing plate, allow me to shape onto my form. But as I have been looking at this a little closer, it's one of those details that I missed earlier that I think is one of those devils in the detail type of thing. You notice this has a shoulder here, and that is about a 1/2 inch long or deep compared to the rest of this handle. Well, I noticed the same down on this end here. So this portion right here is actually much narrower than the rest of the handle. It offsets by about 1.5 inches. So if I just roll around that portion there, I actually have about 1.75 inches maybe. And if I do that on this end, see, I'm really only about 1.5 inches in width on this portion of the handle here, and then another 1/2 inch here. So I'm guessing maybe that's the same here. So this part here, I think I need to neck down another 1/2 inch on both sides and then have that leg come out. And that's going to help this transition in the handle that I had such a struggle with on this one, because I just had too much material and I couldn't control that bend. That's why I had such a mess on this one. So with that seen now, I'm going to reshape this a little bit so I have 1.5 inches here, and then my wing is going to come out another 1/2 inch that'll actually roll into my handle. So I'm going to try to calculate roughly where that transition needs to be. Another way to check my measurements here is like so, and I am 10.5 inches from this lip to where these shoulders need to be. So it should be right in here. So now I am just under 1.75 inches, about 1 5/8 inches. I just took off all the sharp corners here. Since I'm about 1.5 inches shorter, I'm not going to put the wings out here. I did take these corners off just so I don't bark myself up against corners when I'm starting to do this. But I think maybe it might be ready to give it a try. Well, it's pretty obvious by now, I am not a tinsmith. This was tough. This one did clean up better. This is the factory made one. This is my second attempt. Shouldn't even admit that this was my first attempt. But it did get a little tighter. This first one was pretty much a disaster. It'll scoop ashes, but it's pretty ugly. The second one, I am closer in length here, but I'm not to a crisp, clean point, nor do I have nice defined lines in here. I've got some hammer marks in there that are kind of on the ugly side, and I'm rounded out here instead of a nice point. Maybe it's one of those things that practice makes perfect. I don't know. They'll work, but this makes zero economic sense. Go to the hardware store and buy one of these for 10 bucks. I'd have to charge somebody 500 bucks for all the time that I have spent fiddling with this, but I was just curious what it took. I knew there'd be some struggles because you're coming one direction, then you have to make that transition and go the other direction to get this all in one piece. You know, doing the riveted on handle, that's kind of a cakewalk. But this, I don't want to say it kicked my butt, but it was a challenge. But this is really a good example of how I learn by the School of Hard Knocks. You don't know until you try, and I learned something here. I don't know that I've mastered it, but what would I do different? I'd go to the hardware store and buy one. Anyway, hope you enjoy learning as well. I do. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching.